Hello, my soccer universe. My name is Roland and this is Football Talk. We are reviewing the last weekend before the international break, but before we get into this episode, I know I conceived my Soccer Universe Football Talk as a podcast. However, there's also a video component. You can watch me on YouTube as well, and you see me there actually talking about the games. You see a bunch of jerseys always in the background from my collection. Kind of the teams that, according to my model, performed best in their respective leagues, given their expectations, whatever it is. I'm actually quite happy that now we are about 20% into this season. I have finally managed to rebrand all of my league slides that I show also on YouTube. I just want to point that one out. I'm actually kind of sort of proud to have revamped this a little bit. I was a little bit tired of the old way and not 100% still yet on the new one, but I think it looks much better overall. So yeah, just wanted to put this in. This is a visual component that, again, if you watch this on YouTube, I'm really pleased. You have seen a little bit of that. It was always a mishmash before. Now it is all done. But enough of that. Let's go audio mostly component here. The past weekend, we had two really mega games, I would argue, in Juve Milan and of course also in Porto against Benfica. We leave Porto against Benfica for the last because this was really an interesting game, although it didn't live up too much. I also can already spoil that a teeny bit. We had a rather surprising result. I'm wearing Sevilla. They completely took apart Barcelona. That's a pretty big one as well. And for me, the biggest story of the weekend was, of course, my two teams and especially LASK atrocious performance, and still they got a draw of that in record-breaking settings. First part that we'll talk about is, of course, the Austrian Bundesliga. My team Milan also got a draw, so it's a 2-point weekend. Kind of meh, but 2 points sounds much worse than if one team won and one team lost. 3-point weekend, yeah, I was hoping for more. Honestly, I was hoping for more. I knew 6 points is probably a little bit too high up, but 4 points I was really hoping to get out of that. Should have gotten out of it, honestly. Although I have to be happy that it was 2 points overall. But yeah, I would say enough of me rambling around. Let's start right now in the Austrian Bundesliga. Well, after a epic and historic comeback by LASK, there were still no happy faces on the pitch when that game ended. And one can understand, because if you look at the overall situation, that draw was just not enough. But it was a game that will be remembered for a long time. Especially by me, because I was about to leave that game and my wife said, we gotta stay, we gotta support the team, and I give a huge credit for that. In any case, the game, it was like a typical LASK game of the last few, I would say, months or so on. LASK do have the control most of the time in the first half, they also create a few chances, give up also a few, but just when you thought they're closer to the 1-0, they give up a goal just at the stroke of half time. And Hartberg lead 1-0, then you press a little bit more, you open yourself up, and two long balls completely take you out of the game, more or less, with Elias Havel, and then also Hoffmann scoring 2 goals by the 70th minute. It was 3-0 for Hartberg. 2 further goals have been disallowed, and it seemed again empty, without ideas and so on. Until the 89th minute, after a cross in, it's a nice 1-2 between Daniek and Lang puts it into the net. And with a lot of, we were celebrating, but I was kind of saying, it's a little bit too much. This was a stinking performance. We are absolutely horrible, and I was so mad at the entire leadership of the club on that I had a hard time celebrating. However, 2 minutes later, cross in by Horvath, and with his trailing foot, Jørgensen puts it over the line. It's 3-2, and there were 2 more minutes shown to be played on the clock. Hartberg had a kickoff. They don't go to the corner to kill off the game. We get the ball once again, and again it's the same cross, this time by Usor, that is then tapped on by Lang onto Andrade's head, and in the 94th minute, the game, last stroke of the game, Andres Andrade scores the equalizer. Wild scenes, on the people that were still remaining in the stadium. I have to say, there were some reports that it was kind of empty. I honestly have to say, I would say there was still the majority of fans that were starting the game were still there. But, it was not a well-visited game overall because, the weather was bad, the opponent not attractive, and the team currently not good. But, it was still almost 11,000. I think it was closer to 9, if you were to ask me, for the simple reason that I think a few season ticket holders, they are counted, did not really show up. But that's beside the way. It was an incredible comeback and it actually lifted my spirits afterwards. But, I had then the same feeling. In the end, yes, this is one that's for the morale, it's a morale boost. But on the other side, it's again a point dropped. And after this performance, I think you have to say goodbye to the top 6. You have to actually talk about avoiding relegation, which is something that's not talked about with LASK for a long time. They should be playing towards the top of the table, not towards the bottom. And so, it kind of leaves you then in the end when you think about it a little bit more. Yes, incredible comeback, something I've never seen. No Bundesliga team has ever scored 3 goals that late in that short succession and to gain at least a point out of it. It's incredible from that point of view, but overall it was disappointing. The only good part about it was that ahead of this game I knew that LASK cannot be last because GRK lost the day before. But the 2 local rivals that I was hoping with a win over Hartberg we can actually leapfrog at least one of them or get closer to them, they both won. So it was actually a good weekend for Upper Austria with 7 points. I think that hasn't happened this season so far. And especially Blau-Weiß Linz winning at Austria Vienna came completely out of nowhere because Austria Vienna just had 4 wins in a row, winning the derby on top of that. How they lost to Blau-Weiß Linz is a little bit beyond me. Ried had an easy 2-0 win over WSG Tirol. Sturm Graz are now top of the table. Not only because they have a game less, but they are now outright top of the table. After beating Rangers in the midweek, they, had a bad first half. Alter had a few chances, but then winning it late, it was kind of a questionable penalty. Still haven't seen really the contact that allowed Nikitishvili to give them the lead, and Beganovic was the one who was fouled, allegedly, makes it 2-0 in the death of the game. And the outright leaders, because Rapid, despite having a brilliant performance in Salzburg, outplaying Salzburg for most of the time, lose 2-1 because they cannot put their chances away. It was with the first shot on goal, Diabate gave Salzburg the lead, and then Radulovic just before the half equalized. Goalie Schlager had 11 saves. It's a record for a Salzburg goalkeeper. That tells you everything. And then Kitano reestablishes the Salzburg lead. Rapid have the big chance to equalize, and Matthias Seidel skies the penalty. And so, in the big match, Rapid, who probably would have deserved to win, suffer a loss. So the Austrian Bundesliga remains interesting up top, although Sturm Graz now not really convincing, but I think just solid enough, more solid than anybody else in this league, are staying top and are again favorites to win this championship. However, don't forget about Wolfsburg. This Wolfsburg team is again sneaking up on everybody. Let's see if they can keep it up. Going into the international break, we have a new table topper in the Premier League in Arsenal, because Arsenal took care of West Ham 2-0 at home thanks to Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka. Totally dominant and, never really in doubt that one. But also thanks to Liverpool losing their 3rd consecutive match after Crystal Palace, after Galatasaray. They go to Chelsea and lose that one as well. And this time also at the death, like a week ago at Crystal Palace. Moises Caicedo gave Chelsea the lead with a really nice shot, but then in the second half Liverpool kind of rallied, got the equalizer through Gakpo with an involuntary assist by Isak, and then it went really up and down stuff. I really thought in the last few minutes, it was not the game I was watching. I was actually watching Frankfurt against Bayern because I thought this is the bigger match. Maybe was the wrong choice, but the last few minutes that I saw, it was really up and down stuff, and I really thought that either one could win. win it. And I thought it will settle for a draw, but then Cucurella is right at the touchline and puts it across the box, and Estevao puts it into net in the 95th minute. Wild celebration at Stamford Bridge. I think it was a huge relief because they have not been doing well, Chelsea, as of late. So there was a massive win for them. However, Liverpool now lose top of the table, and the talks, is there crisis at Liverpool? I said it multiple times on this show that, Liverpool spent a lot of money in the summer. However, they not only sold players, they more or less built for the future. So this needs to click, and it will take some time, and probably there needs to be also some defensive reinforcements. So that is one thing, and also don't underestimate the impact of Diogo Jota passing away in the summer as well. So, I can see it going not well for Liverpool this season. So with that, Arsenal are now top of the table. Liverpool actually can bounce back with a huge game right after the international break against United. A United team that actually got a win over Sunderland that, should not be surprising, but given how United have been playing, was a teeny bit of a surprise. Semenyo is probably the player at the moment in the Premier League, leading Bournemouth to a 3-1 win over Fulham. Spurs got a very gutsy 2-1 away win at Leeds in the rainy weather, typically British stuff, I would say. And then on Sunday, we had actually 5 games late. Villa get another win, 2-1 against Burnley. They are now racing up the table in 13th and have actually scored goals. Everton and Palace's great unbeaten run with a late goal by Grealish. Also think it more or less bounced off him. Newcastle beat Forest 2-0, Wolves, Brighton 1-1. Things are not looking good for Wolves either. And then Brentford actually gave it their all against City, and it's a game that City won, I think thanks to a Haaland goal, if I'm not mistaken. But this is a game that, showed a newfound way for City, but it doesn't look like the City of old. 6 games into the new German Bundesliga season, and you already know who's going to be the champion. Bayern is just imperious, going to Frankfurt. A Frankfurt team that is really high scoring, but also conceding tons of goals, got completely flattened in the Champions League in the midweek. But I really had some hope that for Bayern they can get something up, and after 13 seconds already, Luis Diaz scored the first goal for Bayern. It was just, how you would have scripted it. And I have to say, the attacking line of Bayern is working really, really well. This is some of the best stuff we see at the moment in Europe. And yes, there will be thoughts of saying, Germany, it's only Bayern and nobody else. But honestly, this Bayern team seems to be, at least offensively. Defensively, I'm a little bit, have some questions, and we have to see how they would fare against a much tougher opponent. But offensively, they are one of the best teams in Europe to watch at this very moment. I also missed the opening goal because I thought, I have the time to actually finish the Austrian Bundesliga games before I switch over to the big game in Germany. Well, I switch over, Harry Kane makes it 2-0 in between. A Bahoyer goal has been disallowed because of a handball in the build-up. I guess by the rules, blah, blah, blah. This was the one chance for Frankfurt to actually really get back into the game. And can I just mention how much I like this new Frankfurt jersey from Adidas? It's actually really nicely done. Frankfurt really tried, but in the end, Rafa Guerreiro then finds Luis Diaz and it's 3-0 Bayern. And it's a thumping. And it just shows how dominant Bayern are. And even Dortmund cannot keep up with them anymore. And there's the big clash coming up right after the international break. However, I think it's played in Bavaria. So don't expect any miracles from Dortmund. Dortmund is also a team that you cannot really grasp yet. Yes, more solid than before, but also attacking-wise, not really what you like. Christoph Baumgartner gave Leipzig an early lead that was then equalized by Couto. However, Dortmund had a really rough time breaking down Leipzig as well, and so it kind of fizzled out in the end. It was a little bit disappointing overall. Dortmund in second place, however, 4 points already behind. Should they lose to Bayern, I think we already can give the Meisterschale to the Bayern as well. The other results, Köln is actually a high-flying team sitting in 6th place after 1-0 win at Hoffenheim, and that's a promoted team. I'm really, really happy about that one. Augsburg also getting a rather remarkable 3-1 win over Wolfsburg, and Augsburg has been a team that has been more towards the bottom of the table, so a really good bounce-back performance by them. Bayer Leverkusen, 2-0 home win over Union Berlin, much needed. Bayer Leverkusen staying up there, but again, it's a rebuilding process. I think the top 4 finish will be the most that they can actually achieve. Bremen also 1-0 over St. Pauli. I don't know. I mean, I have the feeling Bremen could do always something, but I think they're overall too unstable. Stuttgart with a narrow 1-0 over last place Heidenheim. Heidenheim seems to be an early contender for going down. Club, though, is stable enough. I think they will hang on to Frank Schmidt regardless. Another promoted team with a big result. HSV 4-0 over Mainz. Yes, Mainz also playing in Europe, so maybe this would have helped. But, it would be great for HSV and Köln to remain in the league and that we don't lose another big name, although Gladbach is another candidate for an early going down. Only 0-0 against Freiburg. They still have yet to win. They were leaking goals, at least now they kept it tight. So watch this space. Mainz also precariously low in the table and playing in Europe are probably not a good combination either. The Vultures are already circling above Amsterdam because in the Eredivisie Ajax just escaped with a 3-3 draw at Sparta Rotterdam. True, Wout Weghorst had given them the lead, however then a Lauritsen penalty equals for Sparta right before the half and right after the half. Within 3 minutes, Sparta had a 3-1 lead. Weghorst get Ajax back into the game and very late on the newly acquired starlet from Israel, from Salzburg, gets the equals in the 97th minute. However, is it enough for Johnny Heitinga after the really poor performance in Marseille as well? I think the calls in Amsterdam are already for Erik ten Hag to come back and perform another miracle there, and I guess that's the one place where he's still in high regard. Meanwhile, PSV actually managed a 4-0 away win at Zwolle, putting some pressure on table toppers Feyenoord before their big clash against Utrecht, with Sabari and Mann scoring early on. The Thiel goal was also disallowed. Second half, Zwolle is reduced to 10 men and Fährmann adds a third before Flamingo in stoppage time makes it a 4-0 scoreline. Twente get a 2-1 over Heracles before we had the big meeting between Feyenoord and Utrecht, two Europa League teams. And this was actually quite gripping with the way the opening scoring for Feyenoord. However, Zekiel gets the equalizer right after halftime. Sam Stein 3 minutes later reestablishes the Feyenoord lead. In the 83rd minute, Murkin, who had just come on 10 minutes earlier, gets another equalizer, and then Ueda in the 88th gives Feyenoord the 3 points. Feyenoord staying top of the table just with 3 points ahead of PSV. So a rather sizable lead for now. However, it doesn't really mean overall all that much. AZ, who got beaten badly in the Europe on the midweek, win 2-1 over Telstar. Telstar's team that is actually performing overall quite well given that they are a recently promoted team. And then two of the recent cup surprises, the Go Ahead Eagles and Nijmegen, end up in a 1-1 draw. In Ligue 1, things remain relatively tight up top with 4 teams within 1 point. Yes, PSG is still leading. However, they also drop points again, so this keeps it quite exciting. But one by one. Paris FC win 2-0 over Lorient and move into the upper half. So a promoted team from Paris, with support. That's quite interesting. We have OM getting a huge 3-0 away win at Metz. Metz being in last place. Peixao, O'Reilly and Guiri scoring in the second half to get the 3 points. OM probably the biggest challenger at the moment. Nantes mentioned 0-0 at Brest in a sort of Breton derby. Lens 2-1 at Auxerre. Toulouse turned it around late at Lyon. Lyon actually had a lead through Fofana. However, in the 87th minute, there's an own goal by Mata that equalizes, and Emerson in the 96th minute get the win for Toulouse. And as far as I heard, it's the first win in Lyon since 1966. So kind of a big one, I would argue. Le Havre and Stade Rennes play out a 2-2 draw, and Monaco also only managed a 2-2 draw against a Nice team that is really not good. They were 2-0 down at the halftime, despite Abdi getting sent off after Lis took the lead in the 34th minute, and Diop still with a penalty makes it 2-0. And Fatih puts one back in the 45th minute with another penalty. He equalizes, but Monaco cannot find the winner, and at the moment everyone is circling, and there are the rumors that Adi Hütter might get the sack. Yes, injuries, blah blah blah. but I guess he has always been a little bit on the brink with Monaco as well. Strasbourg though storm into third place with a 5-0 win over Angers, and then the big game between Lille and PSG, I watched it more or less concurrently with Juve Milan, which we'll talk about very soon, and I gotta say it was also a relatively tight match. I think a draw was rather fair. Nuno Mendes again, brilliant free kick goal. I mean, this was Roberto Carlos-esque in the 66th minute, gave them PSG the lead, but as I said, it was rather level, and it's an Ethan Mbappé 4 minutes after getting subbed in who gets the equalizer. He didn't celebrate, however, his brother up in the stands. He was present with the entire Mbappé clan, was of course celebrating, which is kind of odd given that we know they all have connections to PSG. PSG with this draw stay just 1 point ahead of the chasing pack, but maybe thanks to the Club World Cup, it might actually become a sort of exciting Ligue 1 season. Let's see about that. The quality at PSG though is still above anything else in the league. Well, Serie also remains intriguingly tight, and we also had a change on top of the table, and we also have a promoted team that is actually sitting quite high in the table. Actually, two promoted teams. Cremonese suffering the first loss, but Sassuolo have overtaken them now with a second consecutive win, a 1-0 at Hellas Verona. Kind of exciting result. Exciting for sure was also Lazio 3, Torino 3, and this was one where there were plenty of lead chances. Simeone opened the scoring for Torino, and Cancellieri equalizes and gets the lead for Lazio in the first half still. In the 73rd minute, Jay Adams actually gets the equalizer for Torino before Coco in the 93rd minute gives Torino the lead, and then it's a penalty given for Lazio after a long period. I think it took almost 10 minutes until this penalty was decided. Cantaldi converts, and so on the return to Rome for Torino coach Baroni, it was a 3-3 draw. There were plenty of emotions in there as well, and also afterwards in the press conferences, even journalists had to be separated after that one, so emotions running high. Lecce got a huge 1-0 win away at Parma, Sotil scoring the goal in the 38th minute, and so Lecce again a little stepping stone potentially towards survival, drawing level now with Parma. I think the relegation battle also will be quite a tight one, and I think this will keep us entertained for quite a while. I was hoping that Cremonese keep up the unbeaten streak against Inter. However, Inter, finding a little bit of form. Yes, they had some very good opponents for finding form, but they were imperious again. Lautaro Martinez in the 6th minute, then Akanji had a goal disallowed in the 12th. Bonni, who actually scored one and assisted all the other 3 goals. He was the star of the show. Makes it 2-0, and then he assists Di Marco and Barella in short succession, 55th and 57th, before Bonazzoli pulls one back. Jamie Vardy also coming on for Cremonese in the process, with having not too much of an impact. In the late game on Saturday, Atalanta only managed a 1-1 draw against Como. I think a fair result. It was a rather even game, chances left and right. Both goals coming early in the game. Samacic opening the score in the 6th minute, and Perrone in the 90th getting the equalizer. Udinese again kind of middling and falling towards the end of the table slowly. 1-1 at Cagliari. Another important point for Cagliari. I have a feeling that Cagliari will have nothing to do with the relegation this season. Then Bologna, big 4-0 win over Pisa. Bologna also kind of reasserting themselves towards the top of the table, though not as good as we had them previously. Fiorentina, though, in serious trouble, just dangling above the relegation zone. Stefani Pioli already under huge pressure. Moise Kean gave them the lead, however, Sule and Cristante, after their absolute mess up in the Europa League, and if you don't know what happened, please watch my midweek review video. Absolute mess up from them. Turn the game around still in the first half. Roma hang on, and Roma took the top of the table, at least for a moment at that point. However, it was the Napoli who again retook the lead and had to come back against Genoa. Genoa team also sitting towards the top of the table, were playing quite nicely. Had a beautiful opening goal through Echator. After a really nice Norton assist, he backheels it into the net. A little bit like the one that Porto scored against Bayern Munich in the 87 European Cup final, not Europa League or Champions League final. Long long time ago, even before my time that was. However, Anguissa heads it in for the equalizer in the 57th minute, and Rasmus Højlund, who else, the star of the show, gets the win for Napoli. And if you saw Conte celebrating after that goal and also after the end of the game, you see that Napoli again are building some emotion up, and it is Napoli's to lose this title. That much is for certain, although Milan probably will give them a good challenge. Milan is a rather solid team. Milan are annoyed that they didn't win this game at Juventus. Yes, Juventus had a couple of good chances, but it was Jonathan David falling over, Jonathan David also missing a run, and especially right after the half, when Gatti had a point-blank range. His effort is thwarted by Mike Maignan, a brilliant save to keep Milan in the game, and then just a couple of minutes later, Jimenez is taken down in the box, and Pulisic has a penalty and skies it. And I was so certain that Pulisic is going to convert that one, given the form he was in. I wonder, why did you go high? I mean, I love penalties taken high. Shows confidence, but you also saw that maybe there was not too much confidence. Milan have missed 5 of the last 7 penalties. That is a horrific, absolutely horrific record. Still, Milan should have won that one. Luka Modric again, I mean, he was responsible for the long ball that actually resulted then in the penalty. He also then assists Leao twice, and Leao, who had come on, you could see he's still rusty, especially the last chance. He has to do better with that one, and Milan probably should have won this game, stay top of the table. I think a point at Juventus is not too bad. You know that Milan is for real this season. Top 4, I think, is something that is very realistic. They're defensively sound, even though the defenders are not that great. They dominate midfield with Rabiot and especially Luka Modric. I cannot tell you how much I'm in love with Luka Modric this season. And yes, I knew he was great before, but now that he's playing for my team, oh my, you know what, it's just brilliant what this guy is doing at the age of 40. Yeah, Milan lose top spot, are now behind Napoli and Roma. However, I'm actually looking quite positive. Little twist in the tail in the upcoming round. Milan will host Fiorentina, and former coach Pioli could potentially get the sack after that one. I actually hope not. I think Pioli should be allowed to build something at Fiorentina, but you know, we know the laws of football. What a difference a week makes in La Liga. Last weekend, Real Madrid had been beaten badly by Atletico Madrid, and everyone thought, oh, this is going badly. Then they had to go away to Kazakhstan. Actually got an easy win. Came back on a Saturday evening, played a rather convincing game, winning 3-1 against Villarreal, with Vinny Jr. being the star of the show, assisted by Mbappé, then given a penalty by Mbappé. Yes, Mikotadze pulls one back to keep the game a little bit tight, but Mbappé puts it away after Mourinho also has been sent off, because Vinny Jr. knows when to fall right. I think he was really going for that second yellow card. But you know, this was a convincing Real Madrid performance against a Villarreal team that is actually one of the better teams in La Liga overall, sitting in 3rd place. So this was a real top of the table clash, one has to say. So Real Madrid, a convincing performance. And then at top of the table, because Barcelona now got smacked going to Sevilla. And yes, they had the big game against PSG, where they probably lost a lot of energies whatsoever. It was really hot in Seville, but still, you cannot get outplayed in the first half. I mean, Sevilla had to have a 4-0 lead at one point. Alexis Sanchez gave them the lead through a penalty when they already could have had 2 goals. Romero doubles up the lead. He also had quite some misses in there. A really nice Rashford goal keeps Barca in play, and you really thought in the second half it's holding on time for Sevilla, because Barca were coming. Not super convincing, but when Lewandowski's penalty was missed, the writing was on the wall, and then 2 late goals by Carmona and Adams really flattened Barcelona, who cannot just say, I don't like these orange shirts. I like Barcelona orange, but with the font on the back also kind of misplaced with the arc. It just looked awful. Why cannot Barcelona play in their regular kit at the Pizjuan? That is one thing that I'm still wondering, I guess. It's all about the money. So Real Madrid, 2 points ahead of Barcelona, and the city rivals Atletico also only managed a 1-1 draw. Yes, had a 1-0 lead and were then reduced to 10 men. Lenglet being sent off, and who else but Iago Aspas gets the equalizer. Celta have not won this season, but have 6 draws, 6 1-1 draws, and then, 2 losses as well. Atletico Madrid also still have not yet won away from home, and this is probably their Achilles heel so far. Other interesting results in La Liga: Osasuna beating Getafe 2-1, Real Oviedo after the big win at Valencia, a 2-0 home loss to Real Oviedo. I'm not sure if I said this last time. Yes, Real Oviedo got actually a win at Valencia in this makeup game. Girona also get the first win of the season, a 2-1 over said Valencia. So Valencia I really thought is a team that could do something. Now they had rather two damning losses. Athletic Club get a 2-1 win over Mallorca. Mallorca had equalized at one point. So Athletic Club, I'm also not quite sure what to make of them at this very moment. Alaves 3-1 over Elche. Espanyol actually playing well this season, have a lose at home to Betis because in stoppage time Betis goalie saved the penalty. He was celebrating but then admitted he's an Espanyol fan and felt not really good about that one. Rayo beat a really poor Real Sociedad side away from home, and also, Rayo is a fun team to watch. The problem is a little bit too low in the table. And we also had a banner weekend in Portugal with all 6 European teams playing each other. Gil Vicente, though, who might be a European team this season, actually didn't care about that, winning 2-0 Estrela and still remaining in 4th place. However, Vitoria get a win, slowly getting the season started in a way, 3rd win of the season, 2-1 over Santa Clara, coming back from behind. They were down since the 6th minute, then at 73rd and 78th. They turned it around through Ndoye and Samu. Sporting could have put a lot of pressure on Porto already ahead of the big Clásico. Playing against Braga, had a 1-0 lead through Suarez early on in the game and seemed like they might be hanging on. However, Salazar penalty in the 97th minute salvages a draw for Braga, and then it was all about Mourinho's return to Porto. After their return to Chelsea, where everyone loved him, he did not get a nice welcome at Porto, despite him being probably the greatest Porto coach of all time, question mark, but I would actually argue with that. However, as Benfica coach, you will not get any love in Porto. And then Mourinho did Mourinho things. Well, he was quite adversarial throughout the game and also ahead of the game, and probably relished that one as well. He just shut down the game. Porto also not really known for conceding a lot of goals, and it ends in a kind of logically 0-0 draw, meaning that the top 3 remain relatively close together. Porto drop points for the first time, so it's only Bayern Munich who have won all their games so far. However, Bayern Munich only 6 games into the season, whereas Porto are already 8 games into the season, but still 3 points ahead of Sporting and then 4 points ahead of Benfica. It is unlikely, from my point of view, that Benfica are gonna get into a title challenge. It seems to be between Porto and Sporting, and Porto already drew first blood there. Again, Faroli doing an excellent job. Okay, that's the end of the trip ahead of the international break. 2 news items that I also want to get in. First off, Inter and Milan have now bought the San Siro and will redevelop the area. They will not rebuild or refurbish San Siro, mainly due to the fact that, the 2 clubs have to play in the stadium. So they will build a stadium next doors, and the stadium will then be kind of torn down. A few parts need to remain because it's a listed building, but don't expect much to remain from the old San Siro. For me, this means I really need to work on getting to San Siro. I've seen it only from a distance so far, and as a Milan fan, that's actually a real shame. Although I hear it's a crappy stadium overall, but still, it's one of those iconic stadiums in the world, and I will be very sad to see it go. And I really hope that Inter and Milan actually build a stadium that is not like a cookie cutter stadium or whatever, run of the mill stuff, but as iconic as the existing San Siro. Although I think they will build one that will have less of a visual imprint as the current San Siro will have, but redeveloping the area and probably having the headquarters there as well. I think it's rather interesting that it's 2 major clubs building one stadium. It needs to be ready ahead of Euro 32. And in Italy, that's always a big question. Another news item also relating to Milan is that UEFA have signed off on Villarreal against Barcelona being played in Miami and Milan's home game against Como being played in Perth, Australia. Second one due to the Olympics. The other one, yes, La Liga really wants to push it to Miami. Everyone wants to go to Miami. Why might that be? It's in a way another home game for Barcelona, because I don't think many Villarreal fans will be there in Miami, even though Villarreal have said they're going to pay supporters to go to Miami. I just don't quite see that, honestly. But I hope those are the only games. I really hope those are the only games. I don't want to see games being given, league games, to foreign countries, but I guess everyone is watching that one now. I can see a Champions League final being played in the United States relatively soon, and I hate it. Cannot tell you how much I hate it. Any case, long video, lots of things happening. Please let me know in the comments below what you thought about any of the topics that we have talked about. How did your team perform on the weekend? Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this episode. Also leave a comment if you really enjoyed this episode, and tell somebody else that we can grow this community. In any case, please enjoy the games also during the international break. Probably have 2 or 3 podcasts of episode planned for that period. We'll have to see about that, but in any case, I will be talking to you soon about more things in my soccer universe. Bye!